Hi, Luke. I've recorded the Skype session that I just had with Anthony and Scott, but I thought I'd then record a separate video or recording that we can look at just at your lesson on its own. So you've got the functional language in speaking from page 76. And so your main aim is uh, functional language, and your subsidiary aim is speaking. There is also some reading and listening, or particularly listening, but that's not your main aim. Annie's helpfully given you quite a detailed outline. It'd be really helpful if you can look at I've linked to a document called Lesson Shapes, and I've put that in the general discussion forum, and it'd be really useful if you could look at that when you're planning your lesson. And you will be following Lesson Shape A, which is language from a text. So please refer to that, because you can. It will help you structure the lesson, and it will also help you to write your stage names and stage aims, which is hopefully will help you writing your lesson plan. So let's just look at your lesson here. You've got exercise 1 as your lead-in. Don't let this go on for too long. Maximum of 5 minutes. Then you've got listening task 2A, which is this one here. So yeah, read the conversation, check the underline. Yeah, okay. So this is just basically processing the text for meaning. If you wanted to, you could even simplify this, actually, because you just want students to listen to the text. But if you don't have time, you can use it as it is. And then you move on to the language focus part, which is 3A and B. With 3A, Annie in her TP points is asked a question. She's asked the question, what is this checking here, or what is it focusing on, meaning, form, pronunciation? Well, as it is, the task focuses on meaning because it's use. You have to match the expressions with the meaning. So, for example, checking your listener understands, adding more detail, asking for clarification or repetition. And the students read, now they, having listened to the text, they now read it and they match the 8 expressions to they put them in the particular particular groups. Students can do that in pairs, and then when you get answers, I'd expect these to go up on the board. So you need to elicit the answer. So you could say, okay, so number 2, where does that, or maybe no, but what a better procedure might be starting from the meaning. So you've got category 1, checking your listener understands, and you can say, okay, so Kazuki, what expression have you got for checking your listener understands? And you'll get the answer. And as you get the answer, you can hear the pronunciation, and that then provides you with an opportunity to check pronunciation, to drill pronunciation, and so forth. And you can write it on the board and include stress boxes, etc., etc. And so you'll be building this up on the board as you go. And categorizing those expressions under the 3 categories of checking that the listener understands, adding more detail, and asking for clarification. So that's during that stage, then you're checking meaning or pronunciation. Well, you're dealing with meaning and form and pronunciation. Form is that you don't really need to do much work on form, because, as Annie has pointed out, they're fixed expressions, so they cannot be changed. Um, you then could do exercise B as well, although you're then actually giving them quite a lot of language to do. Quite a lot of there's quite a lot of expressions in total, because if you've got 8 in the text and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, that's 16. I'm wondering if it might be better to just focus on the 8 in the text and not do exercise B. But I'll let you make that decision. If you do exercise B, then again you'll be adding that to your whiteboard and doing more pronunciation work. With functional language like this, what's really important is for the students to try and memorize these chunks of language, because if they can remember it, then they're more likely to be able to use it when they come to doing a speaking task, and they remember it as one item. So, for example, if they're learning what do you mean by, then they learn that as one item. So it's like we're learning one word, but they have to obviously learn it first. So what you can do is then give them a few minutes and say, right, okay, I want you to you've already drilled them, and it's really important to do some drilling here, because not only does the drilling help with pronunciation, it also helps them to remember the expression. And there's quite a lot to remember there, so all the more reason probably not to do exercise 3B. But then they're ready to then have a go at trying to remember them. And you can just give them a few moments, a couple of minutes. Say, right, okay, I just want you to spend a few minutes remembering those expressions, saying them to yourself, going over them in your head. And you do that, and then you say, right, okay, and you can divide the students into A-B pairs, A-B, A-B, A-B. And you say, right, A, you turn over your sheet, and you remember the expressions. B, you help them. So you could demonstrate that with students. So you could say to them, well, do you get mean? Do you get mean? And you correct them and say, yeah, do you get what I mean? And they help each other. And then you say, okay, now change. B, you turn over your sheet, and A, you help them. And it's a little bit of kind of almost like pair memorization, pair checking, pair drilling even, if you like. And then you can say, right, okay, then turn them both over. How many of the expressions can you remember? There are 3 categories, and again, it's a way of checking. Then you're ready to move on to the speaking task, and again, this involves a little bit of preparation time. Students will need to think a little bit on their own first, preparing what they're going to say, etc. Don't encourage writing. They could make 1 or 2 notes if you want. You could even, there's different techniques here you can do. You can say you're allowed to write a maximum of 10 key words, because you don't want them to be reading, especially at upper intermediate level. But you do want them to actually have a chance to think about this. And then you get them into groups this time, perhaps. And put them into groups of 3. Although, actually, having said that, because the original dialogue is in pairs, you might want to keep them in pairs, actually, but maybe change the pairs to what they've been in for exercise, into the memory test. Change the pairs. There's an opportunity to change the pairs if you think that's appropriate. And they have their conversation, and while they're having their conversation, you could even, here's another thing you could do as well. You can give them a time limit. You could say, okay, you need to talk for a minimum of 2 minutes or a minimum of 3 minutes. Something to think about. While they're doing that activity, you're listening. You're making a notes of language used. After they finish, you can do some feedback on it up on the board. Okay, so here's some language. Here's some things that were good. Here's some things that were not so good. What can you change? Do some feedback, and then say, right, I want you to do the same thing again, but this time in different pairs. And so there's a bit of task repetition here, but task repetition is shown to be really valuable for students, because not only does it encourage them to use the language that they're trying to use in the previous task, it shows that they tend to be a little bit more fluent the next time they do it, and possibly even a little bit more accurate as well. So you get them to do the same thing but in different pairs. So going back to when I said change pairs, maybe don't do it. Maybe keep them in the same pairs until exercise 5 and then change pairs. Um, or you could even maybe do it as a mingle. I'm not sure if that would work, but that's something to think about. And again, they do it again. You're listening to the language they come up with, making notes, and you could do some language feedback. Um, if you're a bit worried about this, then you can always kind of predict some of the problems that students might have, and make a note of some errors that you can do feedback on in case you don't hear any. I don't know what your ear is like for listening in to students and so forth. It's not as authentic as using their own errors, but at least it means you've got some to work with. But that's it really. Nice lesson, interesting lesson. Hopefully students are interested in chocolate. If you've got any questions, please do drop me an email. Obviously, we're at Friday now, and you're teaching this lesson on Tuesday. You've been pretty busy all week. So I hope you get plenty of time to work on this. I just wanted to have a chat with you as well about your assignment, because I've had a look at assignment 3, and unfortunately it is a resubmission. The main issue that you've got to think about, and I'll be emailing this to you hopefully today, if not tomorrow. The main issue you've got to think about is you need to just go through and check all your errors, which I've highlighted, and then looking at your two reading tasks. The first one. The first one, I'm just reading my instructions there. Yeah, if you look here, this is a GIST task. Or no, sorry, you've put it as a scanning task. Reading for specific information. Encourage them to use their scanning skills without reading for details. So if you're using scanning skills, what you need to do is pick out information like this: dates, names, etc. Whereas here you've kind of reworded what it says in the text, so it means that they're then having to understand the text, and it becomes a reading for detail task. So you either need to have more questions like this. 23 years old, the penguin's name is Buffy. So that all they're doing is trying to find specific information, and it doesn't really develop their understanding. Or you might need to completely change the task, but I'll let you decide. I think you could probably still make a scanning task. The problem with the second reading task is you've put it as a detailed task, but you haven't paraphrased the text in enough detail. So if I look in the text, I will read the went down on bended knee and asked. Oh, that's right. You made it as an ordering task, didn't you? You put them in order, but because the wording of these is exactly the same as in the text, it's a scan. This is a scanning task, and it doesn't really develop students' understanding. You might be better writing. Well, but you could still do this task as it is, but you just need to make sure you paraphrase the text. So students read your sentences, and then they have to find the text that has similar words but not the same. Yeah. So do not use the text verbatim. You must. I presume in French you have the word verbatim, which means kind of like word for word. So make sure you paraphrase these sessions. The productive task is fine. It's a bit thin, to be honest, but it's fine. So yeah, that's it really. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news in terms of having a resubmission, but hopefully that's clear. Please drop me an email if you have any questions about this. I've put a resubmission deadline as 26th of June, so try and aim for that, and if you can get it in before, that'd be great. Anyway, best of luck with that, and as I say, drop me an email if you have any questions. Okay, thanks, bye.